Welcome to DAO Deep Dives, where we interview DAO founders, core DAO contributors, and everything else on the periphery of decentralized autonomous organizations.
All right, cool. Super excited to have you here, Charlotte, for our very first episode for DAO Deep Dives. Today, we are aiming to introduce the topic of DAOs to the world. We have a mission of educating and onboarding people in the broader Web3 ecosystem, with this podcast being about DAOs. So I am excited to have you here as someone who has done a lot of research in this world. You have been in DAOs yourself. Super excited to get your opinions on things.
For sure, it's great to be here as well, and I'm happy to give an overview of the world of DAOs. Hopefully inspired to go a little bit more down the rabbit hole and discover more for yourself.
I have one question for you, which is basically, who are you? You were born, now you're here. What happened in between?
Yeah, okay, I guess I'll give you a very quick run through of my life. So I'm Charlotte. I'm from Virginia in the US originally, but I'm based in Denmark now and also in Lisbon. I started my early career in Washington. I worked for a member of the Foreign Affairs and Financial Services Committee, a lobby firm, and then jumped out of that and took an alternative life where I was traveling around the world for a number of years. I was also working as a researcher in policy and development. And that's the angle I got into blockchain from.
Nice. Let's start off with a bit of trying to find out, what motivates you to even be in this space. What is a DAO and why are they important?
So I guess I'll just start with a general overview. And I think DAOs, if we're to talk about how they've evolved in the space, it's quite interesting to take a look. So the original concept, again, it's 3 words, right? Decentralized autonomous organization. And to just maybe take those in turn, decentralized communities have been around for a really long time. I actually got into blockchain and got into Web3 initially through the development space. I was working with the Red Cross and Mercy Corps, and we were writing this report on blockchain for the humanitarian sector and looking at how you bring all the organizations together and really benefit from the technology itself. And as part of this project, it was through an organization called Hive Online, and Hive Online works with women's savings groups and agricultural cooperatives in sub-Saharan Africa. And at Hive Online, what we were building is basically a DAO infrastructure before it was called a DAO infrastructure. So if you know about how these groups work, the women of the villages, they're meeting up once every 2 weeks. They pool their money. They share it out. People vote on who can get a loan out of the shared pool, and they pay back the loan plus interest or a fee. So the shared treasury grows, and the women are able to get more wealthy of this. So if you look at that structure and just add blockchain on top of it, you get what people are calling a DAO now. And maybe this one's a little bit of an intricate example, but the decentralized part is really important here. There's different levels of decentralization. You can have political decentralization, as in who is making the choices, and you can have the technical decentralization. Something like Bitcoin is broadly considered to be the first DAO. Autonomous is kind of a special one here. So DAOs are based on technology. They're based on blockchain technology. And blockchain does some really interesting things and is very foundational across the space. So it allows you to rethink value and contracts. So if you start to rethink value and contracts, you're really rethinking the foundational aspects of society here. And that's kind of where autonomous comes in. With the smart contract and the original ideas behind DAOs, you could have the smart contract itself running a lot of the administration of the community. And organization is kind of an easy one to step on here because it's just an organization. It's a group of people being coordinated through the autonomous smart contracts.
Note on the Hive thing, like what a perfect example of what would benefit greatly from being a DAO ran. It's just a better and more secure way to execute on that exact vision, right, of organization. So perfect. Wow.
So it's actually, there's more women in these savings groups in sub-Saharan Africa than there are actually in the formal financial system. So
Oh,
by
wow.
bridging them into blockchain, a lot of these women, they are unbanked. There's 2 billion unbanked people around the world. And they have this opportunity to even leapfrog some of the financial system models that have not been working for them and that they've been excluded from in the past. And I think DAOs is a really interesting way that a lot of these people can be onboarded into Web3.
Mm-hmm. And I think it gives people the opportunity give, to an organization like that in a decentralized, borderless, and transparent way where we can actually prove where.
This is a super great first example. I'm curious, what other DAO structures and DAO types have you come across and of which are out there? Can you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, of course. So DAOs are really exciting right now because there's such a proliferation of different types of structure. One of the first one was the investment DAO, which is similar to the savings groups, where they come in, they put their resources into a shared treasury. And a lot of DAOs, there's just communities with a shared treasury, and then they're voting on how to allocate that treasury. So with the investment DAO, people put their crypto in the treasury and invest it in other DAOs or other organizations, and then share the profits. And a good example one is Mullock DAO, which is one of the foundational DAOs in the space.
So I'd imagine a lot of people find out about a DAO, or at least contributing to a DAO, or get the opportunity to, through word of mouth, through a friend, through somebody in their network, right? Or maybe they just stumbled across. For that person, what is step one? How do you even contribute to a DAO?
So I think it's really interesting in that there's different layers of contribution to a DAO, and it really depends on where you are in that process. So if you're just a new person coming into the space and you want to get involved in a community, an online community, a DAO, one of the best ways to do it is to go to their Discord, go to their Telegram, and just sit in there and see how the messages are going. Find one that aligns to something you're interested in. I've personally been a scholar of her DAO, and her DAO is a DAO for women in Web3. They send people to conferences. They sent me to Denver last year, which I'm super grateful for. And so you find out about this probably through word of mouth, through a friend. You read about them online. You join their Telegram community, and a lot of them will have an onboarding process to become a contributor if you'd like. And so then you fill in a form, and then you're onboarded into the actual community where you can get to know the other members. You can see if you could pick up a bounty. Bounties are one of these ways to get involved in a DAO, and there's also a number of bounty platforms. And this is basically just a small task, like a Fiverr style task where you can work for tokens of the DAO or even stable coins that different DAOs are doing this different ways, and get involved even financially in working for the DAO. It's a different, and a really cool thing that within DAOs you can work for their native token, and the native token itself allows you in many circumstances, and again this differs by each DAO, but to then vote within the DAO itself on how the community is being run or how the treasury is being distributed. So there's different kind of, to sum up, tiers of participation in a DAO. You can be a lurker, you can just sit in the Discord and Telegram. You can be a contributor, which you're actually working for the DAO. You're building things with them. You're helping her DAO, for this example, to do events, to bring women to conferences. Or you could be, a lot of them have core teams, and these are a lot of the people who are really day in and day out working for the DAO and making things run. If you're looking at like a larger scale DAO, like something like a DeFi DAO, the process might be a little bit different. So what I just described there with her DAO is more of a social DAO. But if you want to contribute to DeFi DAO, again, you can go in the Discord, you can go in the Telegram, but then you can also submit a proposal to the DAO itself, which the members will then vote on. And if your proposal gets funded, then you go ahead and do it. So this really kind of breaks down these barriers for contribution, because all you really need to do is have enough tokens that you can issue a proposal, and then bam, if you have a great idea, you're part of it.
You touched on many different types of DAOs. We have community DAOs, we have investment DAOs, we have everything in between. And one common denominator for DAOs is they all have a shared mission. Each DAO has a mission the members revolve around. And if you find your passion, then just join one. You can start by just lurking, as you mentioned. And if there is a task you think you can meaningfully contribute to, then do it. And maybe you can rise up in the ranks and become a core contributor eventually. We already can work wherever we want. Now we are getting towards the concept of working on whatever we want, where we can make an impact. And if that aligns with our passions, I think that's a beautiful future to think about.
And I just want to chime in and tell the listener that it's okay to be a lurker. If your intro to DAOs is to hang out in Discord and be a lurker, that is totally acceptable. Find out, do your own due diligence, and figure out if this is a community and a project or a mission that you want to be in.
A big part of DAOs is community. And maybe what brought DAOs a lot farther and a lot quicker forward are some of these community DAOs that have popped up early. Let's talk about that a little bit. What's your experience with community DAOs, or social DAOs, I guess I should actually call them? Have you been in any? What do they do?
Yeah, so social DAOs, this is one where I guess community and culture are really strong to being a part of this project. So if you're to join a social DAO and to look at this, I would suggest finding something that you are just super interested in, lurking, and then getting to know people that have the same passion as you. I'm part of a number of what would be decentralized communities, and some of them have a token to them, some of them don't. And so I would consider, even I have a group of girlfriends here in Copenhagen. We do fire spinning together, and we're a very strong community, and we're a very strong community even globally, in that if we go to another city or another place, then we will host and support and help each other out. And we even have a shared treasury of when we are doing events together and sharing it out. And so a lot of these communities, once they migrate on chain, it really helps them out in solving some of their problems in administration and things like this. It can be a challenge to set up a DAO online, though. So if you're to take that community as an example, and this is one of the things that I've had a lot of issues with in onboarding friends into the space, is there's a lot of kind of technical jargon. There's a lot of new platforms. There's the Discord, there's the Telegram, there's the wallet, there's the voting. And it can be a little bit daunting and a little bit difficult to get involved from a social angle. And a lot of what I've seen, not to take this on a negative side, because there's a lot of really cool social DAOs doing social things, it is important to have a mentor to show you some more of the technical ropes. And if you're a community looking to become a DAO, to maybe structure that in a transition that makes sense for everybody, so you don't lose people along the way by adding extra technology. Some of the DAOs that I've seen like really cool in the social space are these ones that have just spun up on a social cause. So I'm American, so I have to mention Constitution DAO, because this is one that really made the headlines for DAOs across the space. And it's a really cool case to look at, because it shows the really amazing power of DAOs. You get people together, don't know each other, different sides of the United States, they all get together and they want to pool their resources to give the Constitution back to the people. And I think that's really beautiful. They did a good job, but then there was a challenge with blockchain and the nature of the transparent blockchain itself, in that if you know exactly how much money the community has and you're bidding on a certain item, what's to stop the person who's bidding against you from knowing exactly how much money you have and bidding just a little bit higher? So unfortunately, with Constitution DAO, that's what ended up happening. But it's still one of my favorite examples. Another really cool one out there that I've heard of is MoonDAO. So I'm not a part of MoonDAO, but I've heard that they are basically a community bringing somebody to space, like a decentralized community with that mandate. And I think that's also super amazing. And it just brings the power back to people and to communities. And I think that's what DAOs are really amazing at. The space program's been with NASA, it's been with these billionaires, and now it's actually tangible that a group can get together and have this ambition to build something like going to the moon.
Yeah, nothing's out of bounds. Nothing is
Yeah.
possible. It can form together as human beings and make whatever we want to make happen. So that's beautiful. It's good to learn about MoonDAO. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, there's lots of ambitious projects out there, and we see more and more adoption in this space. But I think one thing we haven't quite communicated yet, which I believe is important, and you touched on indirectly, which is that concept of ownership, right? What is the difference between a regular startup, any organization out there, or a community, or a DAO, right?
So the theory behind DAOs is to give the organization back to the people who are running it. So if you're looking at a traditional company, and that's the one that's been used as a standard of comparison, like what are we not as a DAO? Generally, you get a couple people at the top who own all the shares, who make all the profit, and you get this hierarchical structure where the people at the top are making all the decisions and they're making all the money. The further you go down the hierarchy, the less really say that you have. And so a lot of people, and I mean, most of us, have worked within this structure before. DAOs kind of turn that on its head, and it really says if you have an amazing idea, issue a proposal. If you are great at what you do, come on in. And by democratizing basically the equity, which is what you would do, and there's some legal issues there. We can touch on that in a second. But the idea is that the people who are working within the DAO, they are getting the tokens of the DAO and they are having the ownership over the assets that are created through the DAO itself. And that's very, I guess, fundamentally different than the company structure that we see around us a lot of the time.
I think that notion of ownership aligns very well with the passion industry. Like, I think if you are joining something which you already are extremely passionate about, and then you can actually have ownership in that project, as well as potentially even earn a living by working for that project, that is extremely powerful. And that's probably one of my favorite parts about it. No doubt that we are currently in this massive social experiment, right? Like everyone in DAOs currently, I think I would argue, is a pioneer.
I would agree with that, yeah. If you're working in DAOs at the moment, you've probably seen the really good, the really bad, and the really ugly, and it goes just across the board. And this is what happens when you have a huge amount of experimentation going on. Sometimes you're going to get it right, sometimes you're going to like completely go off the mark. In terms of decentralization in DAOs, they come in different varieties. And a lot of the DAOs that say they are decentralized, it's actually still at the end of the day this core team that is more or less running the show and then decentralizing out over time. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I've seen a lot of DAOs implement something like seasons. And from having a startup myself that was a DAO, I can tell you it gets really hard to have a startup when everybody's the CEO. You know, some of the things about having a startup is you have to move fast, you have to make decisions, you have to make money, otherwise you're going to fail. And that becomes a lot harder when you are discussing the governance structure or the legal structure of the DAO more often than you are discussing the business plan. So there can be some challenges with that. But where I've seen it done really well is these DAOs that have implemented seasons. They're committed to decentralization. They have a decentralization plan. And the core team knows that somebody has to start the movement. But once the movement is there, that they don't necessarily feel like they don't want to even control it. They want to give that control back to the community that's there. But somebody needs to be the person who lights the fire in the beginning. So these progressive seasons of decentralization might be, okay, we'll bring on some more bounties, we'll issue a token, we'll have different tiers of membership, we'll start using Coordinate for distribution of the treasury to contributors. And back to what I was saying, we're figuring it out.
So there is someone that's entering a DAO, starts to participate in it. What does it look like to get paid from a DAO? Of course, you mentioned the proposal structure where you might receive a lump sum of money or maybe a streamed amount of money on an ongoing basis to produce or complete a specific task. But certainly there are members that are working full-time for DAOs and on payroll, if you will. So explain how that works. That would be great.
So say you are to work for a DAO, and let's just run through the process. I'm new to DAOs, never worked for one before, so where would I go? So if you don't already know this DAO, if you're not already in it, but you just want to try out working for a DAO, there's actually a number of DAO bounty platforms. I think one's called DAO Match, there's another called Cleoverse, maybe Rabbit Hole's another one. You can actually scroll through a number of bounties that DAOs have put out, and bounties are, again, just a call for do a small task for us. Are you a designer? We need a logo, sort of thing. So you can go and you can pick a bounty, and the structure changes a little bit depending on the DAO, but it's either you complete the task and you're paid out by the DAO, or they'll have a contest, like create 10 memes, and we'll pick the best meme from all the people who brought us memes, and the winner will get some tokens. Different DAOs, they will pay out in different currencies. And every DAO I've ever talked to, they only compensate the contributors in crypto. So that's something to keep in mind. You will need the infrastructure of a wallet to get paid by the DAO itself. And what you're actually paid in, it can vary. Some DAOs will pay in a stable coin, which, if you know about stable coins, they're pegged to the US dollar. So you're basically getting these USDCs or USDTs. Some DAOs will actually pay out in their native currency and their native token. I'm not sure we've really touched on how DAOs launch their native token or what that token means. Some of these are governance tokens. Some are connected to the price of the treasury, the assets within the treasury. But it actually, by and large, depends on what makes this token have value. So if you get paid out in a token of a DAO, a lot of times it will be a governance token. So then you will be allowed to vote on chain for the direction of that DAO, which is super cool. On the other hand, sometimes these tokens are not having a huge amount of value. One of the great things about blockchain is you can go on Uniswap, you can swap one token for another if there's liquidity for those tokens. But for some of the low cap DAO tokens, there might not be the liquidity for it, or they might not have a huge value. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're working for DAO tokens. Their value can fluctuate quite a lot. Yeah, sometimes they're paid in Ethereum or Matic, depending on the chain that they're on. They're paid in the base layer token. So you could be paid in any number of those things if you are to take a bounty or to work for a DAO as a contributor as well.
Just to demystify this here, if you're listening to this for the first time, if all of this lingo isn't familiar, if you're not familiar with it, it's not as bad as it sounds. You'll pick this up relatively quickly. A token's a token, right? Once you have a wallet, I'm a little bit generalizing here, but let's say MetaMask, one of the more popular wallets, any ERC20 token, and here's even more lingo, there's a standard, right? And a lot of projects are using the same standard. So if you know one, others are similar. And what I also want to mention, it's getting a lot better, faster, what the user experience is like. And we have a long way to go. Don't misunderstand me. However, let's take the simplest example you started with. You contribute to some bounty, you get USDC, which is, think about it like US dollars, just digital, right? It's the same value. You get that in your wallet. You can now have a crypto native bank account, such as Juno, for example, where you can actually pay with fiat. You have a regular credit card, you go to the store, those assets in your wallet will be able to be used in the regular world. So we are getting there. You do need to understand, of course, what you're using there and, how much Bitcoin's worth. Maybe you want to use that as an investment asset and let it appreciate over time. That is up to the individual. But if it is USDC, you can think of it just like regular money.
It is rapidly improving, and that was not present maybe even 2 years ago that you could do this. So in that case, the whole transition from working from a DAO, getting your tokens, getting Ethereum, and then trying to go spend that somewhere was really difficult. And like you said, it is much, much easier now.
Okay, so to reiterate, I find something I'm interested in by going to one of these websites, which we can drop in comments to point you in the right direction. I go to one of these websites, I search for something that resonates with me. I get in there, I lurk for a little bit to determine that I do like this community. I don't see anything that's really off-putting.
Yeah.
And then perhaps I look through some of the bounties that they would need that I could maybe contribute to. Or I put up my own proposal and hopefully get paid out to go and complete something that I can actually do. Then they're either going to pay me in a stable coin, which is a crypto token that is tied to a fiat currency on Earth. So this could be US dollars or euros or whatever. But typically you're going to find USDC and USDT that are pretty popular. And then I'm either paid in those or I'm paid in the native token of the project itself.
Yeah.
And sometimes even the native token of the chain itself that they're working on. And those I can think of as tokens that this organization is paying me, that I can go to any exchange and swap those out for another stable coin or another crypto token, and then which can be eventually I could sell and move to my bank account using some third-party services. For the people that are brand new to this, that might be a direction that they're comfortable with going. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds right to me. And then the evolution, I guess, to take it a step further from there. So, say you've done this bounty, now the community knows you a little bit better. They know that you're producing good work and you love being there. Then you pretty much just work your way up. So you can take on some more bounties, but if they have a position where you could get a more full-time role or a part-time role, become a member of the core team, a lot of people start on this trajectory where they just join the Discord group, they do a bounty, they start part-time for a DAO, and then as the DAO grows and the treasury grows and they can bring on more paid contributors, it's those people who have been participating a lot that are always the first to get hired from the DAO.
That's phenomenal. And who does the hiring? Just the other people working for the DAO already get together. Does it usually require a proposal to get hired by a DAO?
I think in a lot of cases it does. Again, it depends on the DAO. A lot of the really small DAOs, it will just be a community vote. Should we bring this person on, yes or no? Some of the larger DeFi DAOs have very big, elaborate processes where the sub DAOs, they'll get their own budgets, they'll hire their own team. This whole group of people will be then approved by the main DAO. They spin out in special purpose vehicles for legal. So it varies very widely in how this process would work. But generally, from what I've heard, the way to get in is to first participate. And this is for small DAOs and big DAOs alike.
Fundamentally, I would suggest join something you are passionate about and you see potential in. If you want to join a community just for the sense of belonging to something you share, fantastic, great. Maybe there doesn't have to be a business case, but if it is a DAO where you are expecting to contribute and being paid, ideally it should be something you believe in, because we talked about that ownership piece, right? And maybe this brings us a little bit to culture in DAOs. How important is culture, and how do you make sure there is good culture in large groups and evolving groups, growing groups? What have you seen there?
When it comes to culture, if you look at these DAOs that were supposed to have the robot at the center, the automation handling everything, if you look at the Bitcoin community, there's some of the most passionate people out there. There's like hundreds of Bitcoin maxi meetups, people super passionate about that. And so even in the very technical DAOs, I feel like culture is key. And in the small DAOs and the big DAOs alike. And one of the things that I've seen is really helpful when keeping a large group, a big community together, is having a very clear mandate that's very inspiring, that brings people together, and they know why they're there. Like Constitution DAO, to go back to that one, you're there because you are wanting a piece of the Constitution. If you're to look at Pizza DAO, for those who don't know, they were working to bring pizza to everybody. That's a very clear mandate, and everybody loves pizza. So this is amazing. And to support these smaller pizzerias as opposed to these larger Domino's of the world. And it's something that you can connect to straight away. And so for the social DAOs in particular, the culture and the mandate is key. For the grants DAOs as well, you gather a bunch of resources and you share this out, and the community will vote where the resources of the DAO go. And here it's also very much rethinking how you would do even traditional NGO work, and giving the community a chance to decide exactly where things go. And you would join a grants DAO like that because you have a passion for what you're doing. Say you love ocean conservation. I love dolphins. So I'm going to go find a DAO that does ocean conservation and is sharing out grants, and I can be a part of the projects. I can learn more about them, and I can really feel like I'm doing something really cool for the world. And culture is just number one across the board.
So you're telling me that no matter where you are on Earth, as long as you have a connection to the World Wide Web, we can find a community that shares the same passions with us and change the world for the better in the ways that we believe we can, and potentially even get paid well for it.
That is the vision of DAOs, yes.
That's incredible. What a selling point. Awesome. I absolutely love that answer. And I think that something that would be important to talk about here is really just beyond blockchain, what else is being used here? What is the role of technology in DAOs right now?
Obviously, I guess the blockchain is at the center, and that's really what enabled DAOs. If we go back to the communities, I guess with the internet, you could really have a decentralized community of people that have a similar interest. Set up a website, people come there, even Discord without anything blockchain on top of it. You could just meet people who share the same passion. But when you add the financialization element and you add the treasury element and you add voting on top of that, and that's what Web3 blockchain enables, then you get the chance to do something in a new way. And also, I would like to touch on briefly a really cool kind of element of DAOs. They come from the gaming space. Like I'm sure you guys remember, and maybe for those watching, you probably remember Axie Infinity and how everybody was going wild over these little kind of Pokemon style creatures that you could fight each other with. But that really spun out this interesting type of DAO in the gaming space, which is basically a gaming guild. And a lot of DAOs, gaming guilds, they work exactly the same. You get a bunch of people together, you play a game, you share out the proceeds at the end of it, whether it be a play to earn game like people were doing with the Axies, but this was also done traditionally before even the play to earn was. But this is a DAO that really just works natively itself in the digital space alone. And so if we're looking at the future of work, imagine we're all working in the metaverse and we all just spin up into teams that are little mini DAOs. They're basically gaming guilds. And we go do work, we share it out, and then we can form another team to go work on something else for another DAO. And so you just get these decentralized networks forming all over the place. And that's a really cool future to look at.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You touched on a couple of things now of the future. Like, where are we going with DAOs? We are seeing so many interesting projects, self-owning cars, self-owning houses. What do you think the future is for DAOs? What have we not seen? What are you excited about?
I'm going to tell you about my favorite DAO at the moment. And I'm not a member of this DAO. I guess I'm a lurker if we're to categorize me. And I heard about them at Paris Blockchain Week last year. And the name of this DAO is Bato. And Bato is a decentralized autonomous artist. And what does that even mean? So what they actually did, and this was before the Chat GTP and DALL-E 2 and all of this got really big, they connected a voting mechanism to a text-to-image based AI. And so every week, this AI would produce what it was called fragments, a number of digital pictures, which the community, the Bato token holders, would then vote on which one that they were preferring. The NFT of the artwork that the AI had created got pushed to super rare, purchased by somebody who would like to own the Bato artwork. And the funds went into the treasury of the DAO at first to buy back and burn the token, and then they later changed the model a little bit. But to me, this is just a really exciting and cool combination of how the AI itself is producing value, and enough value that a number of people were actually getting paid to work within this DAO. And to me, it's just a really cool representation of the technologies coming together. A DAO that really brings autonomous back to the core. The community is really exploring the future of artwork and what that even means, because as they vote for the artworks, the algorithm updates for the preferences of the community. So the community itself is changing the inputs for the AI and helping to train it to create cooler artworks that would then, I guess, either sell for more money or be more respected in the art space. So if I was to give one to talk to, I would say talk to these guys. Very interesting. And I think even that token model itself, you could play around with it a lot and really evolve from there.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, a bunch of people coming together to really use AI to focus in on a product that has a marketplace and already are potential buyers they thought, and they were right. And if you haven't heard of Super Rare, it's just an NFT marketplace, but with a higher level of curation than something that you might be familiar with, like OpenSea, which is really the Amazon of NFT marketplaces. What a fascinating use case for not only DAOs, blockchain technology, but also AI. Phenomenal. Thanks for letting us know about that.
AI, blockchain, all of it, bad rep oftentimes, right? And people are scared because they don't know what's coming. This one is super fascinating because, in a way, actually, I would argue entirely, the AI is merely a tool to reflect the sense of community. Basically, what you are getting is art that depicts what this community is about, and it evolves over time. That has not been possible before. And again, AI is not necessarily something negative or positive. In this case, it's a tool to do something that has not been possible before and to organize people around that very case.
The whole idea behind it was to explore what is art. And I think it does it in such a really unique way. And what is even an artist? In that case, is it the AI? Is it the community? It's all of them together. And to me, that's just really special and amazing that's being explored.
Yeah, I think a lot of the just kind of common folk will say here, they hear the word NFT and they think it's art. But of course, NFT is simply a technology that Bitcoin enables. And you can really tie anything to it, right? And I also think that the reason they think that is because art was the first kind of major use case for NFTs that exploded onto the scene and most people heard about. So, of course, we're using, in this example, a community working with AI as a tool, collectively producing a piece of artwork that has a marketplace already and willing buyers. It isn't a far stretch to imagine what else we can create besides art with this sort of mechanism, whether that's autonomous vehicles or housing for the homeless or for wherever you want to go with that, right? I think that collectively a community like this could produce anything, and working with AI obviously gives us that leverage, produce it faster and better. What question didn't we ask that we should have?
I think one thing that we didn't touch on is how traditional brands and this whole concept of Web 2.5 and the concept of DAOs is starting to be implemented not just strictly within the Web3 space. That's not just super crypto people any longer, but some large brands are starting to implement blockchain, but also utilizing the same tools that DAOs are using to create loyalty within their community, to grow their culture, to get people excited about what they're doing, and to actually have their community meaningfully contribute. And on that one, I think one that I recently read about was that Nike, a lot of these brands, they start with an NFT collection. And once everybody is having an NFT, you're a member of the community. But then they started to allow the community to do things like take part of the design process. And I think that's just a really cool way that we'll see DAOs coming into popular culture more and more through brands that are already established but are looking to grow closer connections to their communities, first starting with an NFT, having membership, and then slowly growing out. So I think they're interesting both from a bottom-up perspective, which is mainly what we've talked about now, these very Web3 DAOs that have come out of people who really know the blockchain space and what the technology can do. But you'll also see DAOs coming more top downs from established brands, from established companies, like Starbucks even was taking their traditional loyalty program and migrated that on chain just because of all the different aspects that are really good that come from being able to get closer to your community and really involve them in choices and create culture that way. So that's the one thing I would talk a little bit more about, is that DAOs are everywhere and they're starting to become more and more everywhere. And if you look in the next coming years, you will see them more and more.
Nice. Those are perfect examples. And I think a lot of these Web2 companies are entering the space via NFT collections first. And you had Nike enter the space by purchasing a well-known NFT company called Artifact. And they were producing avatars for the metaverse. And Nike saw a perfect way to produce shoes, right? Which Artifact was already working on. Starbucks came a little bit of a different way, right? Working with their loyalty program, partnering with Polygon to produce that. And it's been a success, at least within our industry so far. I don't know how many of the users that are unfamiliar with Web3 are benefiting from it yet, but hopefully they're using it without knowing. And you had mentioned Web 2.5, and just for people out there that are unfamiliar, this is really just a crossover between Web 2 or traditional brands that have an online presence. That's the most elementary way to say that are having a crossover with newer blockchain-based technologies and Web 3. So it's in the middle. And a homework assignment for those out there could just really look up Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3, these kind of 3 phases that we've gone through with the maturity of the web itself.
Yeah, I love that point. Homework is a fun exercise, I think, for our listeners.
And like, what did I sign up for?
Right.
Join a DAO. Yeah.
Join a DAO. I am extremely excited and thankful for having you as our very first guest on this show. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Any closing words you want to share with our audience?
I think I already said join a DAO and try it out. So I'm just going to leave with that one.
Stick with that. Fantastic.
So cool.
Thank you, guys.
So nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap. Sven and Solve are your hosts for DAO Deep Dives, a podcast about all things DAO. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time.